There you go. So I'll make you the host again, and please make me a co-host, okay?
Sure, sure. There you go.
Thank you. So which do you use the most, Windows or Mac?
I use a Mac the most, but I actually use I use the Parallels version of Windows on my Mac. But I've been using Windows I used it for a long time. So, and I actually still taught a Windows 10 class.
Hmm.
So I'm fairly familiar with it. And I use Microsoft 365 applications a lot too. So,
Okay.
but I mean, kind of gone back and forth. I was using Word at one time almost exclusively, but then when they switched over to the Ribbon back around 2009 or something like that, I switched over to using Apple's Pages application for most of my document work. And I tend to use Keynote mostly when I'm doing things and I can choose what to do it on. But I also, have used PowerPoint and get set up using Google Slides. I've just learned to do some basic things in there. We don't have very complicated slides, so
I
okay.
see it. All right.
Coming.
People are coming in, so
Yep.
I'll just be in the background.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Phil.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. Seeing people starting to come in. Oh, hi, Carl. Good to see you again. Some familiar faces and some familiar names here.
Hello.
Hi, Diana.
Hi.
Wanda, Felice, Catherine, Yvonne, Sheila. We have a lot of people registered, but let me change. I'm sorry, Mr. Huddleston.
Yes.
What is your first name? Is COE?
COE.
Right. Hey, I remember that. How about that? Let me rename you so I don't. Is that short for anything or
It's my mother's last name.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Okay. Great. Great. All right. Well, we'll give people a minute or two to get on. I know all of you went off that were on the All About Web browsers, went off to figuring your privacy settings and everything like that. Yeah. So we're going to talk about how to buy your next PC. And see what we can do. I'm going to try something that I haven't done before in this class, but I think it might be helpful for people, and that I'm going to show you at least in Windows 10, how to find out what model of processor you have in your computer. I do that in the Windows settings class, and I thought, well, maybe it would be interesting it might be useful for people to at least find out what they've got, and then they can compare it, to what else is out there, because that's really what computers are. It's just if you're using Windows 10 and you're looking to upgrade, you're just going to get a faster version of Windows 10. Although I use Windows 10, I use iPad, I use Mac. I'm probably not a very big Android user. I've used it, but I just don't use it that much. So each piece of equipment is a tool that's a resource. So that you know, today we have Phil in our chat area. Phil is monitoring and he's also recording. We're also live streaming. But if you have any questions in chat, feel free to post them. Phil has time to go off and research some things on the web, and he might help find some answers for us. I'm going to try and cover most everything that commonly comes up in understanding what you might need to know about buying your next PC. But
Bob, may
obviously,
I ask you a question?
yeah, who's that?
It's Co.
Oh, hi. Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Do you find a difference between I'm thinking about switching entirely over to the Apple system. I've got an iPhone, an iPad, but I've got a Windows laptop that we use at home. But I just find that Apple is easier to use, and it seems like I get better support and better response out of Apple than I do out of trying to get a hold of anybody at Windows or Microsoft.
Well, there's different approaches. A lot depends on my approach towards switching technologies is, I don't know, have you ever rented a car that was a different model from what you rented? You know how you have to get used to where all the controls are for everything? That's kind of what it's like to switch from Windows to a Mac. Okay. And so you have to go through a little bit of learning in terms of where things are and how things work a little bit. And a lot just depends on how much you want your desktop, your desktop or laptop integrated with your iPhone or iPad. You can do it either way. It's just a matter of personal choice and the amount of learning and whether you're using any applications on Windows that are that specific that you need to keep them. But you can do a lot of things with either platform. They're both tools. Actually, Microsoft owns stock in Apple. They invested in Apple a long time ago when Apple was in financial trouble. They made a huge investment, so they actually benefit either way. You know, you aren't going to hurt Microsoft by switching to Apple, and well, you'll hurt them a little bit, but they sell so many Windows computers in the workplace, it's not a big deal.
Bob,
Okay, so
I think they
yeah.
sold the shares. I think Bill Gates sold the shares.
Bill Gates, did Microsoft sell their shares in Apple?
Yeah.
Oh,
It was a
okay.
deal. He needed money. What's his name? The Apple guy. Steve Jobs needed money, and
Right.
he said, "Why don't you invest in my company? I'll use the money." And then he sold his shares later, made a fortune. He sold it back to Apple.
Yeah, it worked out to be a pretty good investment. Yeah. And so, yeah, every company's got a little bit of a strategy, but we're going to talk about buying your next Windows computer. I've helped people to make the choice between Windows and Macs. I'm in Seal Beach. I've worked in the tech industry. For those of you that have not taken classes from me before, we are recording this session, so you can always request a copy. And I try and make some technology easier to understand for you, and understanding what you might need to consider when you're buying a PC. And PC covers both Windows and Mac. This is why we call this a Windows session, because Windows 10's gotten really, really powerful over the past several years. It's great if we can see you. That helps me when I'm looking at people that might have a question, and you can request a recording after class. You can send an email to help@getsetup.io. If you're joining by live stream, welcome. We appreciate your participating and watching us. And if you're interested in getting more involved in the class and being able to ask questions like some of the participants have already seen, go to getsetup.io and register. It's free, and you can join our classes. And even though we might mention some particular products or websites or other services, we aren't paid to promote anything specifically. So the agenda is pretty basic today about what to consider, choices that are available, and some shopping tips that I have for you. And let me stop sharing for a second so I can see all the Zoom windows and see what kinds of questions we might have and how much. He was thinking about buying a computer soon, like in the next 3 months. Anybody thinking about buying one really soon? Okay, a couple people. Okay. Other people just trying to figure out if your computer's good enough, if you should upgrade when it comes time to upgrade or change. Okay.
I'm looking for a laptop. Is that the same idea as a personal computer?
Yeah, personal computers include both laptops and/or desktops. And I'll talk
Is
a little
this
bit
the
about
buying a Windows computer meeting?
I'm sorry, Bill, what was that?
Is this the buying a Windows computer meeting?
It's a class on how to buy your next Windows PC. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find.
Okay, right, sure, okay, thank you. Now, depending on, we have a little bit larger group, so periodically Phil might have to put everybody on mute. Sometimes microphones pick up some noise, but if you have a question, raise your hand. It's the easiest way to get my attention, even if you don't have your video on, if you use the reactions button on your Zoom screen, because that helps, that where I can pause at a good point to handle questions, okay? So let me share my screen again and go through a few slides here that will help you understand a few things about PCs in general, because you have to know what a PC is. I ran a computer repair business for a number of years at one time, and I got a lot of questions from people about PCs and Macs and tablets and iPhones and other things. And there's really about 6 things that are going to be factors to consider in your decision. And they're more a matter of what's more important to you, the software you use, the operating system. There's typically 3 common operating systems for PCs: Windows, Mac, and Chromebooks, okay? And they're all different. Hardware, the hardware that you consider, where you buy it, the price you want to pay, and where you got support. We had a question already come up on support. And there's different ways to get support depending on where you buy it and how you buy it for all types of computers. So we're going to go through a few of these, and I'll help you understand them a little bit more. Yeah, Bill, you have a question?
Is Windows an operating system?
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm going to explain that to you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Now, the first thing you really should ask yourself about buying a new PC is, how do you use it? Okay, let's think about when you think about buying a car, you think about things like how many people you've got to carry, how far you travel, whether you really need whether you're concerned about mileage, how far you have to travel to get support, who can repair it, those types of things. And so we don't buy a car that often. We might buy a PC a little more often than we buy a car. But there are a lot of things we buy very commonly. So we might, buy groceries every week. So where do you go? What types of food do you buy? What do you look for when you're buying the food that you buy? And so these are things that you just don't know about your PC, but think about what you do on your PC. And the most common things people do are browsing the internet, using email. Right now, we've been doing a lot of Zoom. Some people use their PCs for streaming, like video services. But other than these, think about what is it that you might be doing with your PC. Anybody have anything else that they are using their PC for or want to use their PC for?
Yes, working from home.
Okay, what kinds of things would you do with your PC, Yvonne? Would you do writing documents?
Spreadsheets, documents, email. I work for a nonprofit, so I'm going to be doing heavy email,
Okay.
sending reports.
Some office application type things, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Diane, how about yourself? Diana?
I would use my PC because I have an iPad that I use more, but I'm looking for a laptop to do, I guess, more streaming. And basically I do photo books. So one that has a lot of memory for photo books. I have my own at work. So this is absolutely just personal, just for
Great. Okay.
that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
photos is a good thing to keep in mind. We'll talk a little bit about kind of the 3 ranges of PCs and what works, what you might need for each type of that use you have for it. Bill,
Thank you.
Yeah, I like to go on my computer and I like to I send money to people in my family, like my daughters and my sugar babies and other people that I know.
Okay, Bill. Okay, some of the information you're sharing is not necessarily appropriate for our Get Set Up, call. So, Phil, we might have to watch that a little bit. Okay, okay. And Mary and John, you have a question? Mary and John, you have your hand up? Okay. Okay, so let me, no, so different types of uses for your PC are the things that you might have use for on it. Okay, so software is what you use to do work on your PC. And there's generally three ranges of software that you might be using: web browsing and email. And then this is considered light, okay? Light use of a PC when you're visiting a website, when you're just using email. Those are relatively light uses of your PC. Then when you're doing something a little more involved, like office applications, video conferencing, streaming, finance, not just online banking, but more spreadsheets and maybe some light photo editing, that's considered what you would call mid-range. Okay, this is where the most people need a PC. And then there's what's called a high-end PC. Okay, that would be something where people might use it for video editing, really sophisticated video photo editing, or maybe gaming if they played gaming on their PC. So those are generally the three ranges that you might see PCs fall into.
Hello.
Mary and John, hi. You got your you had a question.
My question was, I'm trying to use my computer so I can do some, I guess, computer things, but my wife had just restarted the internet. So I was hoping you could start from the beginning if you hadn't gone too far. It just takes us a little bit. We're older.
Well, we do have a recording of this class. We have an agenda to follow. I'm sorry, but we do have a recording. You can request a recording at help@getsetup.io. But we've just started, so it's not really too much that you've missed out on, I think.
All right. Well, excuse me.
Get with the program. Get with the program. We all had to get here on time. You do too.
Okay, so thank you, Phil. Okay, so what we're going to go through now is talk about support. Okay, most people think about support after they buy the computer and when they've got a problem. And so there's two things to think about support that are important. One is who does it and how you get to it. Okay, manufacturers and retailers offer warranties, and sometimes they offer extended care. There's always self-service, do it yourself, from manufacturers' websites or search. And there are some people out there that still do independent service and support. How you get to it might be by calling somebody, or by going on the internet, or by having a chat, or by having someone come out to you. And typically, you should ask about support options when you buy the computer. For example, if you buy something from certain retailers like Best Buy or Staples or Office Depot, they can give you the option to bring in your computer, and some of them even offer on-site support. Other manufacturers offer phone support for you afterwards too. So ask about the support, what you need support, how you need support, how you want to get it, because getting technical support after you buy a product is not always the easiest thing in the world. And so understanding what your options are about support are going to be important when you buy it. You're going to have the most choice then. And a lot of manufacturers that sell PCs directly offer support plans too. Okay. PCs are a little bit like layer cakes. Okay, so you've got the hardware, and the hardware is very common. Most of the companies like HP, Dell, etc., they buy components from computer companies like Intel that makes chips, or they buy disk drives from companies in China or that manufacture disk drives, and they buy memory and they buy monitors, and they assemble these products together, and then they get the operating system from Microsoft, which is Windows 10, or an Apple computer might have hardware, and then they might, the Apple will install the Apple operating system. And so the operating system is usually pre-installed on your computer when you get it. And the hardware determines the performance of the system. The operating system makes sure the hardware can do things like start when you power on your computer, or run an application on your computer. So when you get applications, you get them for a specific operating system. So a lot of things like Microsoft 365, for example, we do a class on that, and we talk about it runs on Windows and on Macs. And so if you're used to using Word or Excel, you can use either Windows 10 or a Mac. But since it's made by Microsoft, sometimes they give you a little extra added bonus features when you use it. PCs typically come with built-in photo editors, but if you wanted to get something more sophisticated like the applications from Adobe, they run on both Windows and Macs. And so you're buying applications to do things on your computer, but the operating system makes sure that all of those applications can work on your particular hardware. And so that's the operating system kind of creates that middle layer for you. Okay. Laptop versus desktop. It's really more a question of portability versus stationary. Desktops are not a lot of fun to move around. They're meant to stay at desks, okay? But they have all the same components. What typically will be different with a laptop or a desktop is the size of the screen, that some desktops have the ability, you can get a separate monitor, so you can get a bigger screen. The keyboard might be different size than a desktop keyboard. You might have a trackpad, that's where you use your finger to move things around, versus a mouse that's connected up and you can grab it and move it around. And laptops usually have built-in webcams, microphones, they have Wi-Fi networking, and they have Bluetooth. Desktops often have these things, but you just check when you buy it to make sure if that's important, because if you're going to use it for Zoom, you want to make sure. I was helping out a teacher that had never really done Zoom meetings before, and she had a desktop at home, but she didn't have a webcam, she didn't have a microphone, and so she had to find equipment for all of that to be able to do it. Bill, you have a question?
Yeah, what's an iPad considered?
Well, an iPad's considered a tablet, so you must have seen my next slide.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, so let me go through my next slide. PC or tablet. Apple has invested a lot of money in the iPad. It's a product that runs the mobile operating system for Apple called iOS. And there's also Windows 10 computers that have touch screens that very much act and behave like a tablet. So a tablet is generally considered a tablet if it runs Android or iOS. A Windows PC with a touchscreen is still running Windows 10, and there are many PCs that are just convertible. They convert from a laptop to a tablet. Thing about a tablet is that most people find that if you're trying to type or create or use fine motor control like a mouse where you're doing photo editing or other spreadsheets or things like that, a tablet's an okay device, but it's not a better device. You really want a keyboard and a mouse or a trackpad for those things. Yeah, Lenny, you have a question?
I had a question. Mary and John had a question.
Well, Lenny was, I called on Lenny because I see your question.
Okay, I'll wait.
Yeah.
Now, which is easier to operate? Is it the iPad or the Android?
If you're used to operating one, that's the one that's easier to operate. They both will do a lot of things together the same way, but they are one's made by Apple, one's made by a company that uses Google's Android operating system. So it's going to be more a matter of where you can get help and who you're going to be able to get help from and learning how to use it if it's new for you. That will be, I think, helping you learn how to use it easier. Okay, Mary and John, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm asking this on behalf of Mary. We had our computer, we've had it for a good 15 years. I got it from Gateway back in, oh goodness. But there's a program called Bonsai Buddy, and it's like a purple little monkey. And I just didn't know if this is a virus or should he be coming along with us to our new computer or Android device?
I'm not familiar with that particular program, so I can't answer that question for you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Mary, he can't answer that one, but we can put it on the board for Best Buy Tech. All right, thank you.
And Diana, you have a question. Diana, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sorry, my hand was up by accident, I guess maybe from
Oh.
last time.
Oh,
But the
no
one thing,
problem.
and not to get off topic, but I did want to let you share that the difference I find between a Samsung tablet and say the Apple is your apps. So if you have your music and all that, that would be a personal choice really when it comes to tablets, right?
Yep, the apps you get for Android are going to be different than the apps you get for iOS. A lot of common apps that work on both, but they are very different. Okay. So one of the things that's common with all computers is they come with these components, even tablets do. They might not come with exactly the same thing. Your keyboard and your mouse are your touchscreen on a tablet, but they all come with what's called a central processing unit. They all come with RAM. They all come with a storage device. And then they might have a keyboard, a mouse, and a monitor or display. And they all come with an operating system. So the operating system is going to determine what applications you can get for it. There's a few applications that only work on Windows. There's a few applications that only work on Macs. And so that may help you determine what solution. And there are certain applications that require you to have the latest version of Windows, like Windows 10, which has been out for about 5 years. But those are some consideration. But the hardware is what affects the performance of your computer, which is one reason why most people want to upgrade. Now, I know that some people can upgrade your operating system, but you've still got a computer that's 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. If you
15 years over here.
System, and so when you upgrade your operating system, you're still going to have an older computer. And one of the least expensive ways to get your operating system is to buy it pre-installed on your computer from the manufacturer. That's going to be because you're going to get a brand new piece of hardware with the latest version of the operating system. And operating systems update over time as well.
Hello, I have a quick
Get
question.
into
that prob-
gaming. If do I
Yvonne,
have
let me get
better
Yvonne's
hardware?
question. Bill,
I have
can
a
you
question
hold
about
on?
GP, just real quick, GPUs. Should I get the 3070 or the 3090?
Wait a second, Yvonne. Okay, I'm going to have to ask people to wait.
Oh, okay, I'm Big Bill. All right, assholes. Fuck you.
I'm going to have to ask people to wait until I call on you because Yvonne did.
This is a dictatorship, is what it is. This is a dictatorship where I can't ask a question.
Phil, can you?
The real PC is that you're the PC one.
Okay, Phil.
Liberals, PC culture, cancel culture in here.
Can you guys pipe down, please? I'm trying to pay attention to this.
I'm gonna have to. Phil, can you help me by
Yeah.
monitoring some people, and if we need to, let's kick them out of the meeting for the people that want to learn. This is an
Unfortunately,
informed discussion, okay? And if you can't behave, I'm going to have to shut down the entire meeting.
Who are you talking down to, motherfucker? Pull up.
Phil, who's that?
I removed him already.
Okay. Bill? Okay, Yvonne, please
Uh,
ask your question.
Okay, real
Well,
quick.
she jumped in and interrupted my question, so I couldn't even ask a question because she jumped in while I was already talking.
Bill, please wait. I'm going to have to, Yvonne had a question. You've asked a number of questions. I need to let her talk. Otherwise, I will have to ask you to leave the meeting or I will put you out of the meeting. Yvonne, please ask your question. I'm sorry.
Yes, just real quick. I understand about the RAM and the processor. I just get confused when it says like cords and threads, like 4, 8 versus like 2 cords and 4 threads.
Good question. And you kind of set me up for the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we've got everybody under control now, hopefully, so we can get on with the material. Thank you, Phil. Okay, so price ranges. Typically, this low end range is under 500. The mid range is about 750, and a high end is going to be about 1200, whether it's a laptop or a desktop. Okay. And so we've got these ranges. Now, what do you get in each of these ranges? You get a hardware with CPU, you get memory with called RAM, and you get storage, long-term storage. The CPU and the RAM exchange information, and the RAM and storage exchange information, and how much power and capability you have in each of those determines a lot about the performance of your PC, which is why you want to upgrade. Okay. The CPU is measured in gigahertz. That's how many calculations it does per second. Okay. And Lenny, I'll get your question as soon as I finish with this slide. The number of cores is better. And I think that's what you had a question about, Yvonne, is that if you have one core, you have one CPU on a single piece of chip. If you have 4 cores, you've got 4 CPUs. If you have 8 cores, you've got 8. And that's like having more, pistons in your engine or more people pushing a bicycle. So your speed and your core, number of cores are going to determine. Yeah, Lenny,
Okay,
go ahead.
perfect.
I'm just curious. I've heard a lot about mining crypto, and I was curious how many CPUs would I need to operate a computer that would mine a crypto?
That's off topic, but that you don't even use a standard CPU. You have to get specialized types of computer chips for that.
That's a lie. That's a lie. That isn't what you don't need a specialized CPU. You just need more GPUs. You can mine it.
Okay, Bill. Okay, RAM. RAM is what holds the software and the files while you're using it. The CPU is doing the calculating.
Thanks for your honest answer, Bill.
And
You're very welcome. I'm giving the real information because he's not willing to give it to everyone.
I'm going to mute you. I think, Bill, we have to ask you to exit because I'm trying to conduct the class. And if you want to be the teacher, please go and apply to be one that gets set up. Okay. I apologize for this, people. I've never had a problem like this with a get set up class as bad as it's been today. And so I'm just kicking people out. They're just being rude and obnoxious. Boy. Okay. RAM. RAM holds the software and the files that you're using. So when your computer is communicating, your CPU is doing the calculating and it's getting information from the RAM. Okay. So this communications takes place between the CPU. RAM is holding information that the CPU needs to get to quickly. And the reason RAM exists is because it's theoretically possible to put a bunch of memory on a CPU chip, but it's expensive. It's expensive. So by separating this RAM into a separate piece of component, it makes it less expensive. Generally, you want to buy a computer with 8 gigabytes. That's the mid-range type of computer that's going to have it. It's going to have enough room to do processing. It's going to have enough room to do calculating. It's going to have enough room to do photos. 8 gigabytes is the right size for that. Okay, so now let's go on to storage. There's two kinds of storage disks that have, this has made storage a little bit more complicated than it used to be. In the old days, there was a storage disk called a hard disk drive, and it had a rotating platter. They still make them, and it was used a magnetic disk. And so that magnetic disk rotated around, and it was a mechanical device. So what happens is your CPU would get memory information and work on, say, a document or a photo in RAM, and then your CPU would tell RAM to get things from or to your hard drive. Rotating platter hard drives are pretty inexpensive, but they're slower than this newer model called a solid state drive. It's faster because it is all electronic. So you know how with your iPhone or your iPad, you pop it up and you are able to get your screen lit up right away. That type of capability is because it's all electronic. There's not a mechanical part in it. So computers with solid state drives will tend to run faster. They'll definitely start up faster than one with a hard disk drive. So what you'll find though is that solid state drives are a little bit more expensive. So if you've got a computer with, say, 500 gigabyte hard drive and one with a 500 gigabyte solid state drive, the one with the solid state drive might be several $100s more expensive. And so, but it's faster. It's going to affect your performance a lot. Okay, so you've got storage, you've got CPU, and you've got RAM. Okay, so where do you get help when you want to buy a computer? Well, a couple of options. Okay, there's retailers, lots of retailers that have information on where to buy computers. Okay, and there's Best Buy, Walmart, Target, Amazon, HP, Dell, all the brands sell them directly. There's Apple. Apple has a retail store chain, and it's online, and you can get help from Apple employees while you're buying an Apple. So if you're thinking about moving from a Windows computer to a Mac, or you're thinking about buying a new Mac, and you can add on what's called Apple Care, which is direct support from Apple that extends your support. Microsoft, which makes Windows, actually makes their own model of PCs called Microsoft Surface PCs. And they sell and provide add-on support directly from Microsoft. So one of the ways to get support directly from Microsoft is to buy your computer directly from Microsoft as well. And they've got a great retail organization. They used to have retail stores, now they just do things on the web. And then one of my favorites for technology is Costco. I don't know if anybody has had an experience buying things from Costco, but we've had people that have offered some resources and experiences. Costco, no matter what you buy from Costco, they include 2 years of technical support. TVs, tablets, other things like that, in addition to any manufacturer warranty, but they will provide 2 years of technical support from that. So retailers can make a big difference in where you buy it, because that's going to be determining what kind of support options you might get. But I also recommend you think about getting return policies clear when you buy a computer. Some companies and retailers are much more liberal about return policies, so that if you get it and it just doesn't work right for you, you can send it back and take it back and get a refund. Now, where I go for help, because I don't know everything about technology, it changes a lot, is I typically will use 2 websites that are review websites. I tend not to rely too much on Amazon. That's just a personal preference. But these are websites where they buy the products, they test them, and they evaluate them, and they make recommendations. So I want to share these with you. Consumer Reports is a nonprofit. And as a nonprofit, they don't take any advertising, but they also require a subscription. However, you can get access to them through most libraries. So if I go to Consumer Reports, I'm a subscriber, but they have lots of product reviews. So if I wanted to see all products A to Z, I can do this. Now, again, you either have to get access through your library or through your through a membership. But I found that for the amount of things that I buy, it's really worth light. So if I go to something like computers, let me find computers, they do break them down: Chromebooks, desktops. They even evaluate in-store tech support, laptops, and manufacturer tech support. So let's take a look at laptops, for example, and see what they do. They rate them by type and by size and by other types of things, okay? So they'll give them, they typically will give you information based on the size of the computer screen, because people buy laptops typically by screen size, and the 12 to 13 inch is one of the more popular. A larger laptop screen is going to be 16 inches. And so you might pay more for that. And they don't separate Macs and Windows. They do like Apple a lot because of, and they'll show you things like reliability, portability, performance, display. And they'll give you more information on them if you're interested in reviews. They'll give you reviews for recommended Windows, Samsung. They will indicate something like a Best Buy. That's not the brand Best Buy. That's their categorization, because they say, hey, compared to other PCs, other products, this is 750. That's even considered, they consider it better quality than one that sells for twice as much money. So Consumer Reports is very good at that, because you're not always going to be sure what it is you're buying. And so these companies, there's one company that buys them and tests them and will give you a lot of background. You can go and read. I'm going to send you the link to read more about it. Wirecutter is my other favorite site to go to for product reviews. Wirecutter does accept advertising, but for the most part, they've been pretty impartial. They do buy products, they do evaluate them, so they just don't review it based on what they do. And there's other sites out there like PC World and others. But if I wanted to look up, say, laptops, and they do more products than Consumer Reports, and they're free. And so they'll explain a few things like we've talked about. It might be easy to read an email on a smartphone or a tablet. Sometimes you need a bigger screen and an actual keyboard. So they've tested 100 laptops. So they actually go out and buy them, and they kind of organize them into categories like the best business laptops. So if you're looking, some people mentioned they wanted to do things like some photo editing or some business applications like Excel and other things. They have a set of categories. They kind of categorize them by that, and they'll typically come up with a first choice, a second choice, and a third choice. So their best pick is this for the best business laptop, and they'll show you it's got a quad core Intel Core i5. That's a fast processor. They don't show you the speed, but if you went to the HP website, it's probably a 2.5 gigahertz processor. It's got 8 gigabytes of memory, but they also look at other things like battery life is important for a laptop, and storage capacity. This has a solid state drive, so it's going to be really fast, and it's relatively lightweight. They say if that's too much, if that's not.
Oh my God.
Phil, what's going on? Okay.
Let me check that.
What
Okay,
was that?
I don't know where that came from, to be honest.
That is a new participant, and I'm monitoring that account.
Okay,
Please wait.
thank you, Phil. Okay. The Lenovo ThinkPad is another alternative. It's $1,000. Good quad core Intel i5, 8 gigabytes. They said it's good, but it doesn't cost as much, and it might be good. And then they have an upgrade pick. So Wirecutter will give you some of these options that give you some choices. Let me go back to their laptop screen. And if you wanted a laptop for, let's see, for video and photo editing.
Jesus Christ, you're boring as fuck, man. God, you're dull.
Phil, where's that?
Right, I removed it already.
Okay. The best laptop for video and editing. I'm sorry, people. I don't know where we're getting these things from. Phil, thank you for monitoring this capability here. The best laptop for video and photo editing from Wirecutter is the Dell XPS 15. You're going to find generally that if you want to do more video and photo editing, they're going to recommend a much more powerful laptop. So they're going to push you up into a higher price range, but they're also going to give you recommendations that have definitely high quality screens and other information that's going to be good. And then you're going to get 6 cores, okay, and a Model i7, which is really, really faster. And they're going to give you 16 gigabytes of memory. So that's what, and you're going to get a 512 gigabyte solid state drive. So you're going to find that as you go up in price, you do get more capability for all of these things. So those are just some ranges that we have that we can look at. And those are 2 of the websites that I look at for people to get information about what type of laptop or desktop they might want to look at. And they'll be in the email follow-up link for you as well. Okay, so a checklist, and then I want to show you how you can find out what you've currently got in Windows, is that you check your warranty and return policy, make sure it uses the applications. And part of a challenge is that we buy a PC and sometimes we don't know what we're going to do with it 2 years from now or 3 years from now, okay? And so those are some other things you can look at. Eva said, do I look at CNET? CNET's another computer website that does like a publication like PC World and others. They're good, but they tend to be, sometimes they tend to be overly technical for a lot of people. And so if you can get different information. Yeah, Phil, did you have something to say?
I'm sorry, Yvonne has a question. Unfortunately, she doesn't have the raise hand capability.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Yvonne.
Hi, I have a question. Can you explain a little about like the IPS panel versus the TFT? Because I know some are a little bit more brighter than others.
To be honest, I don't know that much about the different display technologies. I tend to go high end when I buy things myself.
Okay.
And so I rely, the technologies are so difficult for me to understand on display technologies that I rely really a lot on what Wirecutter and Consumer Reports recommend for displays and monitors.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. It's challenging because there's just a lot of different technologies that are out there. So there are challenges, and that's why I rely on review sites. And it's something where if you're like, for example, I have a 27-inch $500 Dell monitor because I do photo editing on my display. And it was rated very high for color accuracy. But I mean, you can go to Costco and you can buy a 27-inch monitor for $120, and it may be good enough for you. And so everybody's needs are going to be personal more than anything else. Okay, so before I finish, I want to show you how to find out what you've got inside your computer right now, at least from a processor and a storage standpoint. So I'm going to stop sharing my Windows screen or stop sharing my slide and go to sharing my Windows desktop screen to show you how you can find this in Windows. And because once you want to know what's inside your computer, it's going to make a big difference if you have an idea what's in there already. And it's pretty easy to find, particularly in Windows 10. If you're using Windows 7, your computer is probably at risk for security issues. You shouldn't be using a computer that old. Windows 10 is about 5 years old. I personally tend to upgrade my technology. My computer is about anywhere on average about 5 years. But sometimes I'll go a little longer depending on what I have. Okay, so in Windows, if you click on the Start button and you go up to the Settings gear, you'll open up the Settings option in Windows 10. And what you want to look for is something called System, okay? So if you click on System, it doesn't show it right away, but we have to scroll down to the bottom. At the bottom is this thing called About. Now, another way to get to this really easily, if you're interested, is if you had this closed and you just type in the search box About, it'll bring up information about your PC right from search. So that's another easy way to get to it. So what this will tell you is about your PC, which is what you want to know.
Hey,
So
I'm gonna get my cock out your mouth. I'm on the Zoom.
Sorry, I removed him already. That's a new partition, but
Hey, I'm gonna get my cock out your mouth. I'm on the Zoom.
there you go.
I think we're getting hacked, aren't we? Or something. Okay, so what you have here is a processor speed, a Core i7 that tells you how fast it is and what you've got in there. And it tells you what your installed RAM is. Okay, so that's where you can find out that information. And when you go to your storage information here, you are able to visit and see your local disk, okay? And see how much storage you have and how much is used and how much is available. So you're able to get that information right from your Windows computer. And it's pretty convenient. So that way you can tell. Now, most people think they need a lot of disk space. And if you do a lot of photos, you really do have a need for a lot of disk space. If you are not doing a lot of photos, you may find that the amount of storage you need on your computer locally isn't often very much more than 256 megabytes, okay? And so those are some problems. So yeah, so those are some things you can do to check out where you can get into your PC, find out a little bit about it. Now, I will tell you something I learned. I actually learned this from Zoom. So I'm going to go to Settings and I'm going to go to About. Zoom actually had a really useful help tip that helped me a lot. And I honestly didn't know this until about 6 months ago. Okay, Intel has this numbering scheme where they come up with numbers, i3, i4, i3, i5, i7, i9. With this number, the bigger the number, the faster the chip. Then they have this other number right here, 7700HQ. Well, the first number here, the 7, actually tells you what generation of processor chip you have. And Intel comes out with a new generation every year, and they basically upgrade their capacity and their speed and their capability so that if you have an i7-7 something, that's a 7th generation. Right now they're in the 10th generation and they're getting ready to come out with the 11th. So that can help you sometimes compare if you got an i3 or an i5-5 or 6 or something, you know you've got a little bit older chip. You will see on new chip computers that you'll get an i7-10 or an i7- something else, okay? So these are some things that you can use to check out what you've got now and where you've got it. Okay. So I think, Phil, we have stopped questions except for people that are raising their hand. We've stopped some people from coming into the waiting room. Thank you all for being patient while Phil and I dealt with trying to block some bad actors from the meeting. I think instead of, yeah, Janet, I see, I've never had a Zoom like this one before either. We did have an indication that maybe some people, which is why Phil is on our session all the time, because one of the other instructors did have a session where they had to actually shut down the class like 15 minutes early because we had some people. And it's unfortunate because the only way people are supposed to be able to get into our Zoom meetings is with the a Get Set Up account, but there's obviously a lot of people with way too much time on their hands and nothing else to do, right? But we did get through all the material that we're supposed to get through. We're going to watch the recording. The staff at Get Set Up will watch this recording because we want to try and make this experience as good as possible for the people that are really trying to learn something and want to learn. You're going to get an email that'll have the ability to request a link to the recording, although considering some of the content, they may or may not make it available, but there's previous versions of this class I've done that they can make available to you. You'll get links to wirecutter.com and you can do a search for that. Go to Consumer Reports, take advantage of your local library. They're a great resource. You know, as far as I'm a big fan of staying with what you're familiar with. However, as Carl asked earlier, you know, one of the things that happen is that companies want you to use all of their technology. They're businesses. And so Google wants you to use all Google, Apple wants you to use all Apple, other things like that. So those are some things that are going to be valuable. So for those of you that want to learn, I see Victoria has something in chat. If you're interested in learning more about Windows settings, there is a class actually on Windows 10 settings where we do go into more of those details about how to do those things. Apple's strategy, by the way, is to get everybody to buy an iPhone first, then an iPad, or then take it to a Mac. Let's see, I'm not sure whether we had, Phil, did we have a question? Francine, do you have a question?
Bob, I don't have a question, but I just want to personally thank you for offering this informative class in the face of adversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Francine. Yes, I think most of you that have been on Zoom meetings before know that this was a pretty unique one that you've experienced. Yeah, we do our best to try and make sure that that inappropriate content isn't out there. And I think we had some great work by Phil. Thank you to Phil, our teaching assistant, for being on top of this and kicking people off that didn't really have a place here and making sure we can make the learning experience good for everybody. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Victoria, let me ask Victoria, the class that we have, it's called Windows 10 Settings. Let me put that in chat for you so you know it, the name. And I actually do that class as well. Okay. Okay, Phil, go ahead and unmute yourself, Phil. You have something you want to add?
I mean, Victoria has a question. Here's the question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Victoria, that was the name of the next class for Windows is Windows 10 Settings. Yeah.
No, I mean, she has another question here above. She said,
oh, in the settings system, where can we find the program? Well, Windows 10 is what's installed. If you're looking for specific programs in Windows 10 settings, there is a way to look at apps if you're interested. but it's in Windows 10 settings is where you can find that out. Carl? Okay,
Bob,
yes.
which do you like better, Apple or Windows?
Boy, that's a tough question, Carl. I was a big Windows user in the workplace because Windows is the most commonly used platform for businesses and offices and organizations of any kind. And so you get used to using that. I switched over to using a Mac more about 8 years ago and have been using Mac a lot, but that was when Windows had Windows Vista and Windows 8, and they were not the best Windows. Windows 10, I found, has become really, really impressive to use and has a lot of capabilities in it that if you're familiar with Windows, unless there's a compelling reason to switch over to a Mac, I mean, Windows is going to be something you're familiar with and comfortable using. Obviously, if you use a lot of iCloud services from Apple and a lot of apps from Apple, then it's worth it to look at using a Mac. But if you're not a big Apple application user, meaning like Apple's Pages and Numbers and Keynote and video editing and photo editing tools, then either Windows or Macs will really both do the job for you equally. So it's really hard. I tend to tell people stick with what you know, because learning something new is a lot of work. But that's just my personal point of view. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming on, and thank you for those of you that wanted to learn something, for being patient with us. We really appreciate it, and hopefully you won't have an experience like this one. I know there was another class recently where we had some challenges too, and we're keeping on top of it. Diana, did you have one question before we go?
No, sorry, I'm just trying to say thank you to you.
No.
I really am walking away with a lot of information. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
And we'll hopefully see you soon, everybody. Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.